Okay, Jacob, what a 15 minutes we've had a conversation. So let's continue adding the same value. Okay, but like for those that don't know you, few of them for sure. Like, can you give us a brief introduction about your background and what called you to create NECC?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me, Ivan. I always enjoy our conversations, and just want to publicly thank you for all the work that you've done. Your work. Certainly, the information that you share is valuable. So I just wanted to upfront say that and say thank you for having me. I think for me, I am a true outsider, and people know this. I come from the traditional college athletic space. I spent about 20 plus years working primarily in Division III, Division II athletics in North America and the United States. And then about, just over 5 years ago now, helped start the NECC. And what I mean by help start was, our school presidents wanted to sponsor esports at the conference I worked for, the Division III athletic conference that I worked for. And I said, I know nothing about it, but I'm willing to try. We sort of began building what was a part of the New England Collegiate Conference at the time and is now turned into the National Esports Collegiate Conference. And it's wonderful. It's challenging. It's humbling to be a part of this wonderful community, but really proud to be here. And it's been a labor of love. I share with a lot of folks that nobody's getting rich in our world, but we're doing it for the right reasons. And I think that's to support the community, and that's to hopefully elevate what's going on in the collegiate space in North America.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. We have a similar path in the way that I also come from traditional athletics.
Yeah.
Like I started working with student athletes, and then I transferred to student athletes, but in esports. So yeah.
It's I think one of those things, and I think that it's one of those things, Ivan, and that's one of the things we've always talked about is there's so many similarities, right? And I think that that path, ultimately, you're providing opportunities for young people, and I think that's really pretty special. Whatever vehicle you choose, right? It can be soccer, it can be football, baseball, whatever it may be, or it can be Valorant or Rocket League or whatever. That's just the path through which you continue to grow, mature, and develop, be a part of a team. All those skill sets that are very valuable for young people to learn and further and develop.
Yeah, amazing. And before we continue, I want to give a step back and be like, so can you explain what NECC is for those that don't know?
Sure.
And then from there.
Yeah, you and I are in the weeds. This is awesome. So for us, National Esports Collegiate Conference, we are a multi-title collegiate esports conference. Right now, that is our focus, is in North America, college and university. We're proud to work with over 500 schools throughout North America, 2-year, 4-year, you name it, Division 1, 2, 3, NAIA, junior college schools in Canada, school in Puerto Rico, et cetera, and the like. And it's trying to provide. We started as a competitive entity, right? We started as, hopefully your Valorant team can have a good experience with us, or your Overwatch team, or whatever. And we've grown into one of the larger collegiate entities in the space. And I think certainly one of the things we've talked about as a staff is, there's no 100-year blueprint, right? There's no how-to. So there's been a lot of failures along the way. There's been a lot of hiccups. But I sort of look back on our first night going live back in the fall of 2020 and sort of scoff and laugh at how bad it was. And now I'm in the weeds day to day with us. And, I know how much better it can be and how much work it takes to get there and how committed our staff is to continue to ensure that we will be better. And I'm really proud of the fact that, every single semester, I think, has been better than the previous one. And I think that has certainly been a goal of ours. We don't have the blueprint. We don't have all the answers, but we're going to get better. And I can assure you that fall of 2025 is going to be better than the fall of 2024. And I can tell you right now that fall of 26 is going to be better than the fall of 25. And I think that, aspirational goal to continue to grow, continue to get better has been cool. But we're a collegiate esports conference at our core. And trying to support our membership and provide the best possible experience we can for the schools that we work with.
Yeah, amazing. And you kind of touched a bit, but what would you say are your uniques compared to the other conferences? Why our schools I want to compete in the NECC?
Yeah, I think the first thing that sort of differentiated us was our divisional model in many ways. And that came from sort of mirroring what happens in traditional college athletics in North America with the NCAA, with Division 1, 2, and 3. Division 1 schools play other Division 1 schools. Well, through us, it's through a competitive lens, not necessarily your Division 1 school like Ohio State plays a Florida. No, it can be a Maryville or Northwood that are not Division 1 schools that are obviously very successful and very high level esports teams and programs. So it came down to, hey, the best teams should be playing the other best teams, so on and so forth down the ladder, all the way down to very casual players that, just want to play Rocket League together with their friends on Thursday night and have a good time. They can have a good experience. And I think ultimately the best possible thing that we can provide our community is good, solid competition on a weekly basis, right? Who wants to show up and get your doors blown off? That's not fun. And nobody signs up for that. Nobody signs up and says, well, I'm a pro level team and I'm playing this team, which is, not nearly as good as me. And I can screw around for an hour and then flip a switch and win that match or that game. That's not fun. So I think our divisional model was really successful for us. It's grown. It has gotten flushed out. Like everything, I think it's gotten better each semester we've done it. Not to say it's foolproof, because it certainly is the furthest thing from it. But it's gotten better and better with API integration, with the hard work of our staff, and our games team does an outstanding job. And I mean, late hours of discussing where teams should be played. Should they be Division 1? Should they be Division 2? Should they be Division 6, Division 7, all the way down? It's not just based on pure rank. They really dive into sort of the weeds to make sure that teams can have a really good experience. And, I'm proud of that fact. I think ultimately for us to provide the best possible experience, that's central to what we want to do and what we can do. And that's our challenge. Whenever I meet with a school, I'm very transparent about the fact that, like, playing as many leagues as you want, we just want to be one of them. And that's intentional, right? We are not territorial. We do not say choose us or choose somebody else. We just hope the schools have a great experience competing with us. And when a school registers, I say, listen, like, we're not going to hold your feet to the fire. We want you to choose to compete with us every semester. If we're not working out, if we're not doing our job, then you shouldn't be competing with us, right? And at the end of the day, that's a weird mindset to have. But I really think that we want schools to choose and say, hey, I had a great experience. We're competing in NECC in the fall, and then we're doing it again in the spring, and then we're doing it the following fall, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
If they're not, then they should be somewhere else. So I think our divisional model is what set us, I guess, apart originally. And now I think it's just a matter of making sure that we're supporting the programs that we're privileged to work with on a sort of on a higher level, in addition to competition, and supporting them in ways that can provide their success on their own respective campuses, their own respective institutions.
Mm-hmm. You touched a lot on competition, and I've seen a lot of like people be like, because like they're not happy with the rescheduling, because like in esports it happens a lot. In traditional sports, when I was playing collegiate tennis, barely did we have reschedule. Like I don't remember like having like
No doubt
one
right.
in 4 years. So how are you handling the rescheduling thing and make sure that a program, has certain highlights, like you can reschedule like in the same day or 1 hour?
Yeah, two things that we've done pretty intentionally, Ivan, in this way. You're right; it is a problem. First and foremost, first thing we do is we went from originally a 24-hour reschedule policy now to a 7-day reschedule policy, and this was because we got feedback like, "Hey, I'm planning a stream, I'm planning a watch party, and the day before I get a ping, I get a message on Discord saying I have to reschedule that match, and that makes me look bad on my campus, right? You're trying to build some excitement, you're trying to build some momentum, whatever, and then the match is rescheduled, and you're absolutely right. That looks amateur, right? It does not happen in traditional sports unless there's a weather situation or something, out of the ordinary, obviously. The other thing that we've done is we require all of our rosters, all of our teams to have at least one sub. So in Rocket League, for example, you can't submit a roster with us unless you have 4 players. Obviously, only 3 are active, but this is so that if something comes up with one of the players, one of your starters, that match can still go on, right? That's going to happen. And the analogy I make with traditional athletics, Ivan, you talk about like as a tennis player, as a tennis student athlete, if you sprained your ankle, that match that you were scheduled with your opponent, they still played. Even though you weren't going to be able to play, they didn't say, hey, Ivan's down, we need to reschedule our next 3 matches because he's important to our team. They said, no, somebody's going to fill in, somebody's going to serve as a sub, and they're going to play that match. They're going to play singles, they're going to play doubles, whatever it may be. And I think that's been central to us, right? Like, those things happen, and you don't get to reschedule. You don't get to say my best player on the basketball team sprained his or her ankle, and I need to reschedule the next 4 opponents until they're healthy again. No, somebody steps in and fills in their place, and that's a part of life. So for us, you have to have a sub to be eligible. And when a team submits a roster, using a Rocket League example, if you only submit it with 3 players, it won't allow you to. Now you can have 3 players play the entire semester, obviously, but we want to make sure that if something happens, somebody has to finish a paper or finish an exam or run an errand or call mom or dad or, get dinner or whatever, that match still occurs. And it's not just like, oh, I get a ping 20 minutes before that, that match isn't going to happen. And I think that ultimately it's important for our space to get away from the reschedules as a whole. Like, we send out our full semester schedule of competition early on in the semester, so hey, these are my opponents for fall 2025, and this is when they're played. And if we tell our schools, like, there's going to be things on your campus, like, identify them for us now, so that, again, it's not day of, week of, day before, where you have to reach out and say, oh, I need to reschedule that match, because honestly, we won't allow that reschedule to occur.
Amazing. We have a question from the audience, from Damaso. So, how do some esports become consolidated while others gradually lose popularity and demand at the university level compared to previous years?
It's a very interesting question. Obviously, we've seen a massive spike in Marvel Rivals with that launch, wildly popular. What's been really unique about that is taking players from a wide variety of titles, right? You've got Rocket League players who are like, I want to play Rivals, which is really atypical. For us, it's a matter of making sure that we're meeting the needs of our schools, our community, right? So we will reach out and poll our community. We'll get feedback. We'll talk to directors, say, what do you want to see us sponsor? And then it becomes a matter of, how do we get permissions? How do we get, the rights from the publisher, the developer to sponsor or to offer that title? I think what's been unique as we've grown, EA, Electronic Arts, reached out to us and said, would you sponsor Apex Legends? We want to grow the collegiate scene for Apex Legends. It's the first time we've had a publisher directly reach out to us and say, would you sponsor this title? Typically, it's us saying, hey, Psyonix, can we offer Rocket League? Hey, Riot, can we offer Valorant? Can we offer League of Legends? Things like that. So I think ultimately we're not trying to be everything to everyone. Like, there's so many titles and so many different games that people play, and hats off to the leagues that offer so many titles. We've been intentional about making sure that if we're going to sponsor a title, we're going to do it at a pretty high level, and a level that we're comfortable with, so that the community can have a good experience. And ultimately, some of that gets down to just sponsorship and numbers. Like, if we only have 10 teams that are playing, it's not going to be a great experience, because that divisional model, you're going to have high level and low level, and you're not going to have that much competition. So we see it through that compete lens. But, certainly the fluctuation of games, the amount of interest in titles is unique. It's different. It's not like traditional sports where, basketball, baseball, soccer, football are sort of going to be there year in and year out, lacrosse, field hockey, things like that. So that's unique. And I think we'll just try to evolve and be present. And we've tried to do that with Rivals, recognizing that this is taken off and it's become wildly popular, and people are playing it. And we want to bring that to our community if we're able and allowed to do so.
Amazing. We have another question.
Awesome.
From the audience. Oh, another way. First of all, with Ben Cuomo. Okay. So, what is the most important thing, in your opinion, for collegiate esports to become sustainable?
Wow, that's a great question. That's the million. Yeah, right. There it is, the $1 million question right there. I think ultimately, and we've talked a lot about this, and obviously there's been a great deal of talk about this in the space. Ivan, some of the work that you've done has been focused on this as well, which has been great and very, very valuable. I think for collegiate esports to be sustainable, without going on a 10-minute diatribe, is making sure that schools have a definition of what success means to them. And I think it starts with that model of, all right, I'm sponsoring esports at X university. What is my definition of success? When we started, most programs, quite frankly, popped up during COVID as a way to provide something for their college or university, right? Because traditional athletics shut down. So we saw a massive spike in the number of schools that were sponsoring esports. As a result of that, there wasn't a long-term blueprint in terms of, hey, what are our benchmarks? What are our, how do we, from year 1 to year 2, what's the definition of success? It was just, we have esports. What does that mean? I don't know. We have esports, right? Because we could do it. So we had to rush it. So I think ultimately for the sustainability of collegiate as a whole, and listen, no two schools have to be the same, right? What your definition of success, again, at Cal State Dominguez Hills, can be extremely different than it can be at Florida Gulf Coast, can be extremely different than it can be at Drexel or at UMass or wherever. So I think that ultimately a school has to say, we are sponsoring esports. What is our definition? What's our metric? What's our KPI for use a business term, key performance indicator, in terms of this is what defines success for us. Now, it can be winning championships. It can be competing at an extremely high level. It can be graduation rate. It can be we want to grow the program. It can be we want to have an educational framework. We want to have professional development and internship opportunities. That's what defines our program. But I think ultimately for sustainability and for the model for collegiate as a whole, you have to say, hey, this is my program. I'm the director. Whether you're working with a president, a dean, whomever you answer to, athletic director, whatever, wherever you're housed, I think you have to understand and define what your metrics for success are. And then you can say, hey, I checked that box. Or, I need to grow my program from 20 players to 30 players in the next 2 years. All right, I did that. And now I've had some level of success. And it can be evolutionary. Obviously, it can change on almost a monthly basis for what that definition of success is. But I think if you don't have that blueprint, if you don't have that roadmap for what's defining success, then you have a really hard time telling the story of your program. And I think that's a challenge. And I think that's where we've seen some issues in the space in terms of why do we sponsor esports? And that's, you got to sort of know your why, to use sort of a general term. Why do we sponsor esports at my university? And once you have that defined, then I think you can have a vision. And again, there's 1,000 schools that sponsor esports in North America, to varying degrees. No two have to be the same. But I think you'd have to know why you're sponsoring it, why you're offering it on your campus, or else you're not setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, and what the school administration expects from you.
Absolutely.
If you're misaligned,
absolutely,
it's not going to last very long. Yeah,
that clear definition has to be there, so you can prove your worth.
Yeah,
you can prove your value prop. You can prove that you're succeeding.
Yeah, Jacob, I must say that you should start a weekly live talk on your own channel. Like the questions are like
no. This is you, my friend. I'm just leading on you. You know that.
Okay, so from Kevin, here on the same note, does the potential inconsistency of which games are popular long-term give you pause? I can imagine that it's hard to establish concrete infrastructure if maybe in a year the game you build something around could be dead.
Very good question. Yes, absolutely. It scares me to death. I will tell you that the thing that is really daunting is, unlike traditional athletics, nobody owns basketball, right? Nobody owns football. Mm-hmm. Nobody owns soccer. Well, you know what? Psyonix owns Rocket League. They own the IP. They own everything. The publishers own these games. And I think it's very important for the space to make sure that we have permission and authorization, ultimately, to offer these titles on a consistent basis. And we have never been territorial about this. When we work with publishers, we're like, listen, spread the licensing to everyone. Make sure that everybody has the title, because that's going to allow the infrastructure to grow and do it better. And ultimately, more players are going to be playing your title, and that's what you want. But to answer that question, absolutely, that is terrifying. We've worked with, if our first year, I think we offered Hearthstone, Madden, things like that, and they don't exist anymore. And we're like, this is our 6th year coming up. So relatively speaking, it's a very short window of time, but we've seen that turnover. And for us, single player games have not been as successful just across the board. So we've gone to that, multiplayer game, which has been better for us at the NECC, not speaking for others. But yes, it is very scary to work with a publisher, to work with a developer, make sure you have the permissions, make sure you have the proper rights, and not know a year from now if that title is even going to be exciting, if there's going to be an interest or a want from your community to offer it and sponsor it.
Yeah, that leads me to another question. Like, and this hasn't yet happened to one of our students, but like, what if they go with a scholarship from a video game, sure, and in 2 years out, and they still have 2 years of their bachelor's degree? What do universities say on that? Like, do they have to switch to another video game? And
we've seen this happen with some pretty prominent, some pretty high-level schools that are offering, esports scholarships, which is awesome. I mean, quite honestly, to have that, that buy-in from the university, which is really great. Typically, what we've seen, and there's been high-profile examples this spring of ceasing. We're not offering that title anymore. What we've seen typically is two things. A, I will help find you another community, another campus, another school to transfer to if you want to continue to play. And B, what the schools have been really good about by and large, which is awesome, is we will honor your scholarship for the 4+ years, whatever that path to graduation, mm-hmm, whatever path you were on, even though we don't offer Overwatch anymore. We don't offer Valorant anymore. We don't offer whatever, League of Legends anymore, something like that, because we as a school have chosen not to sponsor it anymore. But yeah, that has happened. And I know those are hard decisions for schools. You invest at a high level, and then you don't. I mean, it's no different than when a school stops offering swimming and diving or field hockey or lacrosse or whatever. That's a hard decision, and that has massive impact on your student athletes. No different than when a school stops sponsoring a title in their esports program, and that's a challenge. But so far, by and large, schools have been very good about honoring that commitment for the length of that, that scholarship opportunity for the student athletes.
Okay, that's good to know, and also that's good to know
Yeah.
because I can communicate that to parents.
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
Amazing.
it's very scary, but by and large, I'm not saying it happens with all, but by and large, the high profile schools that have said we're not going to sponsor X title anymore, they've said, hey, you're a sophomore, we will honor the remaining 2 years of that scholarship package, even though you're not going to play Overwatch anymore because we don't have it at our school.
Amazing. Okay, then let's move on to the next question, Brett.
Yep.
Beyond gameplay, Collegiate Esports is becoming a talent pipeline for broadcast, analytics, and coaching roles. How does NECC plan to embed credentialing pathways like coach certifications or micro credentials tied to industry partners?
Very good question. It is a focus of ours. It is not something we are experts in. I'll be very transparent about that. At this point, and I say that intentionally, at this point, collegiate is not a great pathway to pro player, right? Most of the pro players are identified at a much younger age. They sign with teams, et cetera, at that level. So but there is, I say that there is a massive want to continue to work in the industry, right? You're passionate about it. You love it. It's what you do. It's what you want to do. Hey, if I can make it a career, great, all the better. Conversations with different organizations about coaching opportunities, about professional development opportunities to provide those tools, to provide those frameworks. We've worked with a lot of people, former players that have now taken over, become directors. We've worked with a lot of casters that have now gone on, right? We don't pay enough as our casters. They can tell you this, that we don't pay enough. But if they can get opportunities to grow and use the NECC to really get hours and to get those opportunities and to add to the resume tape and to go on to bigger and better things, those are success stories. And I think ultimately for us, it's sort of a holistic goal of ours is to support our community, support our schools at a higher level. So if you need pathways to coaching, development, certification, things like that, we're not going to offer those because it's not what we do, right? We don't have that certification plan. We're not authored to do so, but we want to connect you with the organizations that do and make sure that you have the opportunity, you have the tools to meet that framework. One of the things we're working on intentionally right now is job opportunities for our community, right? Not just in esports, but hey, you're going to graduate with a valuable degree. How do we connect you with a path to a career, whether it's in esports or out, working with those organizations that see this community as very valuable because they're extremely smart swath of the population by and large. And that's valuable to companies that are recruiting. They want these players to come and join their company or their brand or their organization and work for them. If we can help facilitate that and show the long-term growth and long-term opportunity that esports is providing. All right, now not only did I get a degree and I played Rocket League for 4 years, but now I've got a job after I graduate. That's the success story, right?
Yeah,
That's
especially for especially for this kind of companies that are like in the STEM field. That
absolutely
to recruit a student, it's very a long process. Like being able to do activations from like 2 years in advance and offer like an internship, and then when they graduate, a potential job opportunity. Like for
that
sure,
pipeline, I didn't really know it, but that pipeline to companies is very valuable. You're absolutely right. And there is that long-term sort of mindset of, all right, we've identified this student athlete as a sophomore. We're going to provide him or her with an internship opportunity, begin to vet, see how good they are, see what their strengths are, see what their weaknesses are. And then thinking long-term when they graduate, hey, we're going to provide them a job opportunity. And I think that if we can help with those connections, that's a massive value add for our schools and our partners.
Yeah, I mean, I think more companies in those areas should do studies on like how much money and time does it take to onboard someone and for that person to leave, and with this current pipeline with Collegiate Esports, how much they can save potentially. That could be a great study.
As you said, with the specifically the STEM pipeline, that's a massive percentage of our student athletes. Working and identifying those companies that are looking to recruit those young people to join their company in the future, that's an opportunity going forward in terms of how do we show esports is more than just a game, right? It's a pathway to a professional opportunity. Ultimately, every school, every university throughout, I'll speak for North America because that's where I am and that's what I know, they want to provide very good training for citizens to grow and grow into successful, members of society. And if we can use esports to help advance that and help to further that, then that's a win for all parties.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Damaso again. Do you think all universities will eventually adopt an esports program model? If so, how many years do you think it might take for this to happen?
It's really interesting because I think in some ways every school has players, right? There's no school in anywhere that doesn't have people that are gaming, people that are playing, people that are playing on teams. What that's defined as looks very differently. I think we've seen some schools sponsor it and stop sponsoring it, and that's scary. And again, it gets back to our discussion earlier, Ivan, about what's your why, and knowing why you sponsor esports. That's critical. I've had a lot of great conversations with schools that are saying, like, I'm thinking about sponsoring esports. What does that mean? And I'm like, well, let's have that conversation, right? What are you trying to get out of it? What's the reason you're going to do this? And being intentional about understanding that model. And I think ultimately, as we go forward, it's a little bit like we have to make sure that as schools begin to adopt, they're set up for long-term growth and success. They're not set up for failure. And I think that's the model that we have to make sure that schools that are beginning to, I had a great conversation with folks from Wayne State University recently, just to call them out on an individual basis. And they're starting, it's a club, it's sort of student-led, and they have an advisor, and they have somebody that sort of speaks to them, but they're thinking this as like a long-term, like, all right, what does this look like for us at Wayne State University, and how do we define it as success? All right, we've got a community of players. We know we have some people that want to compete and stuff like that, but how do we advance it? How do we take it from step A to B to C, and ultimately sort of that upward trajectory of like, what does it look like? Now, they might not ever have aspirations of being scholarship or being high level, but providing that great resource and that great tool for their community, so that like Wayne State's like, hey, we have a great esports program, and we have a community of 50, 75, 100, 200 players that are having a great experience. And that's ultimately the fabric that we need to look for. So to answer the question of will every school, I don't know what my answer to that would be. I hope every school that does it well, because that'll be the better thing for us, right? Is that like, and again, we're a membership driven organization. Like, majority of our revenue comes from membership dues. So we need schools to adopt it and have it be successful, so that they're not questioning, why do we sponsor esports on an annual basis? Because that is taxing and that is challenging for all. And to your point, Ivan, it's not good for that community, because then they're like, well, I came here, I'm going to be on the Rocket League team. Well, wait, we don't have an esports program anymore. Why did I come here in the first place? That's been so central to my experience at that campus.
Yeah. You put the example of Wayne State. They're a student-led program. Let's put them as an example.
Sure.
Do you believe that in order to carry that vision, there should be at least the dean of students in charge of it, or someone that is part-time or full-time that is not a student in charge, in order for that to happen? Because maybe, because students graduate and it's kind of complicated to have many leaders. I don't know.
For us, we require at least what we call sort of an adult on campus, a liaison. It could be a faculty rep, it could be an advisor, it could be an athletic director, it could be a dean, it could be a president, it could be whomever. I think it is valuable to have at least somebody who understands the proposition that is esports on that campus. Now, I want to be pretty intentional here in saying that some of our best programs are student-led organizations, because they're so passionate about it, and they are locked in, they are communicative, they are good to go. But I think in order for, as you were talking about, sort of the long-term sustainability, right? You don't want to just have, I've got 6 great leaders, and all of a sudden, to your point, they graduated in the spring of 2025, and now what? Right now, what does my program look like? Now they're all gone. So I think there is that model of success, to have somebody that at least is identifying, all right, I'm overseeing our esports program, and can at least provide them with the tools, whatever that may be, to be successful. Whether it's registering for leagues, whether it's professional development, whatever you choose. I think it is important to have somebody that at least understands it enough, so that the program can be successful and it can be sustainable in terms of that opportunity for the school as a whole.
Okay. We have another question from Brett again. What coaching credentials are you looking for in NECC?
Yeah, I think for us, listen, it is wildly, open in terms of coaching opportunities. And I think the schools that have done it the best have devoted coaches for each individual title, right? Just like, again, using a traditional sports analogy, you don't have one person coaching soccer, football, baseball, basketball, right? You have one person for each of those titles. The schools that are doing it the best We have a Rocket League coach. We have an Overwatch coach. We have a League of Legends coach. We have a Valorant coach, so on and so forth. Credentials in that space, there really isn't anything. I think credentials will be defined according to each school and whatever they do. My assumption is that it's being able to communicate, it's being able to teach, it's being able to speak the language, and do it well. So I think the best coaches that we have, and we have some unbelievable leaders in the space, obviously, that we work with, and their ability to communicate and to advance, and to teach and to support and to facilitate. That's the stuff that makes really good coaches. We're working with an organization currently that has coached professional teams and rosters. And they're looking to get into the collegiate space and provide more avenues and provide more vehicles and saying, hey, listen, we've worked with pro level players to advance their careers. Can we do this in collegiate? And whatever that looks like, whether you want to win a Division IV national title or be Division I or wherever it may be, just reach your maximum potential. But I think one of the things, just to go back a little bit, when you have a school, when you have a program and you have one person that's tasked with managing and coaching 8, 9, 10 different titles, they're going to have expertise in one, maybe two, maybe three, if you're lucky. But they're not going to know the ins and outs of all of them. So then you have a player that goes there and they're like, hey, my coach is great. I love him. I love her. A great person. But they don't speak the language of my game. I'm not getting better. I'm not getting any sort of formal trainings or any sort of, formal feedback or any sort of, professional coaching, quite frankly. So that's the stuff where, you've got to provide those opportunities, just like you have a lacrosse player and they have a goalie coach and they have a strength and conditioning coach, all those things that are built in so that they have the tools, they have the resources to grow and further and get better and put in the hours, whatever they should choose, they can reach whatever goal they have in mind.
Ben now poses a very interesting question that I want to touch with you, Jacob, today, and it's about viewership. Because we focus a lot on collegiate programs, the players, the directors, the head coaches, but there's something, that maybe it's kind of urgent, or first we have to fix many other things, but viewership, if we have more viewership in the collegiate esports scene, well, more sponsors and everything, will be much better. So to Ben's question, how do you create the types of stories that the general public will latch onto with esports, similar to what ESPN did with traditional sports?
Very good question. I think that ultimately right now viewership's not there, right? Just very transparently. And part of this, I think, is because, the history isn't there, right? Collegiate in North America, at least, is, about 10 to 15 years old. So it's not mature in that space, whereas you have college basketball is 80 years old, college football is 90 or 100 years, whatever. Doesn't excuse the fact that it doesn't exist. I think as we go forward, these numbers will continue to grow because you'll have some alumni that care about, hey, how's the Rocket League team doing at the University of Michigan? I played on them. I want to see how they're doing now, right? So you have some of that, that framework that grows, and you have alumni, you have people that were in the program, you have connections still to the program. And again, this is a relatively young space in terms of the life cycle of collegiate in North America. For us, the numbers just aren't there in terms of people that are watching the game. So how do you get people invested in other ways? To your point about sponsors and dollars, that is very important. They typically see it as eyeballs on streams, right? That's been the sort of the defining factor. Well, I have 1 million concurrent viewers. Oh my God, I can reach that community. That's massively valuable to a brand. I think for us, one of the things we've tried to work on is making sure we tell the story better. To that point of that question, we do it through competition, typically. We're going to do more, speaking for the NECC here, we're going to do more storytelling in 25, 26 and beyond so that people can understand the community, the players a little bit better, and not just say, oh, I'm going to tune in for Rocket League match for 45 minutes on a Thursday night, something like that. Instead, it's going to be a pivot a little bit more towards telling the story of our community, telling the story of our student athletes. Hey, this is Ben Smith. He's from Kalamazoo, attending the University of Michigan, and he's a 3.9 student athlete. And oh, by the way, he's a great Rocket League player. That's the stuff that I think moves the needle. And I think ultimately, while the viewership isn't there for a match, I think if you can get buy-in and understanding from the university and the viewership of I know Ben's in my class. I didn't know all this stuff about him. What a great success story. I'm proud of what he's accomplished. And I'm proud, that he's here at the University of Michigan. That's the stuff where we can help grow what's going on in collegiate. And ultimately, I hope we can do it through that lens as opposed to, well, this is the best Valorant team in collegiate and you should tune in because of that. Now, some of that is warranted. I want to see how Northwood does versus Fisher. I want to see how Maryville does versus Akron, whatever, those high-level programs, Illinois State and the like. But I think ultimately if you can get investment in terms of the people and the human aspect and those stories that that was mentioned in the question, that's the buy-in, right? Oh, I care about Brian because now I know Brian, and I saw this 30-second video on him, and oh, I want to know more. Oh, I'm invested, and I think that's the stuff that we need to do a better job of, is telling those stories of our players, just like the Olympics does in some ways. Like I don't really care about speed skating, but that's an unbelievable human interest story about this speed skater from the Netherlands who's done it their whole life, and now I can't wait to watch them compete on Friday night and see how they do in their match or their event or whatever it may be. In our world, it's matches and games, things like that. I think that's the stuff where now there's an investment, there's a human interest, human element story that is a little bit better told than, oh, tune into this random Valorant match on a Monday night and you should care about it.
Yeah, because humans, tune in with other humans, so that's for sure. And out of ignorance, do you guys do like in traditional conferences, like All American or like best academic?
So this year we introduced academic all conference to sort of sing the praises. We have not done athletic sort of like awards like player of the year or all conference selections. It's been through the academic lens at this juncture. That recognition is important, and that's why we introduced our academic all conference component, because we want to tell the story. We want to sing the praises of, like, hey, look at this, like your student athletes are achieving at a ridiculously high level, the same way your women's soccer team has 10 players that are academic All-Americans. Hey, all of a sudden your esports program has 12 players that are academic All-Americans, and you should tell those success stories. You should be proud of that fact, because that's why we're here, right? We're here, to succeed in the classroom ultimately. Now, again, whatever lens you choose, whether it's soccer, football, whatever, Valorant, Rocket League, choose your title. That's the thing that you do. But the reason you're there is to succeed academically and ultimately, hopefully, earn that path and that pathway to graduation and that degree.
Yeah. Also, Brendan from Endicott College said, "Amen" on the human interest angle, Jacob.
Brendan's the best. That's good. I'm glad he's here with us.
The marketing master.
Yeah, right. I know you've spoken with him. He's a great man, doing great things, and excited, obviously, to call him a friend. And what he's built in the short period of time there at Endicott has been awesome to watch.
Amazing. Jacob, before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to mention that we haven't touched on?
Yeah, I think what I share, and again, I'm a relative newcomer to the space. I think what I share with people who don't know, and there's probably not many of those watching, people who are tuning in, or obviously are in the weeds and they know it. So it doesn't apply to people. But I think what I didn't know is how wonderfully warm, inclusive, positive this community is that we work with in Collegiate Esports. And that's the thing that I tell. Like, we work with thousands and thousands of players, and the amount of, I'll say, issues that we have with behavior is so tiny. It's really impressive. And I think that, when you talk with people who don't know, they have this perception because they've seen a 60-second piece in the evening news, or they've seen some blurb, or they've read some article about bad language or whatever. And, oh, it's on a chat and they're hidden, whatever, blah, 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 blah. I think what's been really cool and really eye-opening, really special to me is how wonderfully inclusive and how wonderfully warm this community is. And I know that collegiate can be really divisive, and I know that people can be critical and they can spout opinions and disagree, and that's okay. But what I keep coming back to is collegiate right now is in such a space where, I'll use Brendan as an example. Like, Brendan at Endicott, he's competing against other schools for potential student athletes, for recruits, for people to come to his program. But he'll have conversations with programs throughout this country to tell what he did well, what worked for him, and vice versa, and ask other directors, hey, what worked, what didn't work for you? And right now, every school is so invested, and every director that I've worked with is so invested to providing a better experience for their community, for their players, that I hope that never changes. And ultimately it will. Yeah. I know Ohio State and Michigan hate each other, and they will never talk to each other, and they, whatever. But right now, esports is in such a place where it's in such its relative infancy that people are willing to have a conversation and say, hey, this is what I did that worked for us. You should try it. Or that didn't work for us. Maybe it'll work for you, but just a heads up. And I think that collective effort to provide, because ultimately, again, very few people are making a very good living doing this, quite frankly. It is all for the young people. It is all for this community of players that people are in it, and they're trying to provide the best possible experience they can, given the resources that they have. And to be a part of that is really special for me. Again, coming from traditional athletics where it was very competitive, very territorial, very, I'm worried about my program, my team, blah, blah, blah. I don't care what else is going on. And we're trying to beat you. To be a part of this community that is so open, is so inclusive, is so welcoming, sharing of ideas. Ivan, you're a perfect example of this. You have talked with people on a weekly basis that are sharing their blueprint for success. Like, where else does that exist in our world? Like, hey, this is my blueprint. This is why I'm succeeding. And I'm going to give you all the secret sauce. Like, that's amazing. And people are so forthcoming and so willing to do that. I hope that never changes, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's to provide the best possible experience for our student athletes. And that's why everybody's in this space as a whole.
Yeah. On that point that you just mentioned, I mean, what works for one program or for one person doesn't work for the others, but you can always get a bit of everything and validate and see if it works or not, and then build your own system. That's for sure. Yeah.
And I think gleaning those facts of those, again, those secrets, right? You know, when you're talking about what worked at Conestoga is not going to work for, University of Florida, Ohio State, whatever, any school in between, UNC Charlotte, whatever it may be. But to understand and to share, that's really valuable. And again, to be a part of this community, and I know it's challenging at times, and I know we're all facing our own issues, as you allude to, Ivan, you're absolutely right. But at the end of the day, it's to provide the best possible experience for our players. And that's really cool. That is really special to be part of right now. And, I think ultimately 10, 20, 30 years, I think esports programs will just sort of be second nature, just like an athletic department as a whole on most schools, because they'll understand their why, they'll understand the value prop, they'll understand the resources putting in and what it means to their campus as a whole. But right now, we're not there yet. So how do we make sure that we're growing and aspiring towards reaching that level of we're providing that unbelievable experience for our student athletes so that they can have a great experience during their 4, 5, 3, 2 years with us on this campus, and they can go on to becoming really successful members of the community.
Yeah, we're building the blueprint, and
absolutely,
we're failing and learning.
That's exactly right. And I think that's
in 20 years.
Important. Yeah. And I think that's important to share that it's okay, right? We're nobody's got to figure it out. Nobody's got the blueprint, but we're all in this together. And I think that's the value that we have to understand is like what we do might not work for somebody else, But as you said, if we can just share and have that conversation, that effort of, hey, you're trying to help your student athletes, I'm trying to help mine. What did you do? And how can I just take away some of those things, or even some of those things that didn't work can be as valuable, so I don't waste my time trying to do that, and didn't work for you, it's probably not going to work for me. So I think that sharing of information right now, Ivan, is really special, and I'm really proud to be, like I said, in this world.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Jacob, hopefully let's see if that, camaraderie
let's keep doing it
in collegiate esports, because maybe as programs grow more, I think it's going to be like in traditional sports.
I totally agree.
They're going to be super competitive.
A little territorial. I agree with you. I agree, but that's all right. That's all right. I mean, again, at the end of the day, if the maturation gets there and we can get to that point, then I think it's okay, right? Because then we'll know, right? We're not reliant. We have the infrastructure, we have the buy-in, we have the support. But yeah, right now it's really special to witness. It's really special to watch, and I hope we get to that point where someday we're fighting, and Michigan, Ohio State aren't talking to each other. Esports programs aren't talking to each other. They're having a great experience, and they're successful in their own right.
Amazing, Jacob. Thank you so much for your time. It was amazing. I hope this gets shared and to students, to program directors, whoever. But the knowledge that you shared today, thank you for that.
Ivan, thank you so much for the time, and again, thank you for all you're doing. It's important work, and I thank you for the conversation as always, my friend.
Thanks, Jacob.